Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Buckle up, buttercups. It's time to get down to business. Oh, yeah. It's the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. Totally legit. Now, here are your hosts, Clint and James.
Hello, it's the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. We're your hosts, Clint and James. And Clint, happy birthday.
Oh, thanks, buddy. You were late just like I was. It's fine.
Yeah, it's not a big deal. I figured I'd return the favor. How was
Actually,
your birthday?
No, you did text me on my birthday. And
got you there, buddy. So I'm the better friend. Yeah, that's really what it boils down
You're
to.
better than me.
What would you tell us what you did to celebrate?
Bro, as usual, before I take any time off, I set myself up in a fucking gauntlet of nonsense. So last week I went down to Portland for work, which was always interesting.
There's your first mistake. Yeah.
It's always interesting in Portland, right? And whatever, some dudes I work with down there who I like, I'm just meeting bros. Like they're bros. They're like, oh, I played football in
sick,
dude. Like, oh,
yeah.
You don't say. I never
really,
I mean, nice dudes or whatever. But one night, I kind of had to show them what was up. They're a little younger, they're like in their 20s. And, they were like, oh, we're going to take you out drinking to all these spots and stuff. I was like, all right, cool, whatever.
Sure,
and
buddy.
I was just like, I'm going to make it a point just to fucking like drink you under the table, which I don't do often, but I had to, kind of like show them what's up.
You had to lay down the law.
So by like the 6th or 7th bar, it's like 2:00 in the morning and I'm just sitting there and I'm drinking, but I'm able to keep my composure.
You're good.
I've done this for a long time. Right. And I'm like, you guys want another beer? And they're like, no, God, no. And I was like, all right, let's go home. just had to lay it down. So I won their respect.
Yeah, it's kind of genius too, because you drink them into pacification and then send them home. Like you're in total control of the evening. Mm-hmm. Like there's no fuckery that's going to happen because you're like, guys, I'm more sober. Trust me. Listen to me.
Dude, and they even had home team advantage. Like they know the bars.
Oh yeah, dude. They
were dragging me.
They
gave me Jello shots and shit. I was like, yeah, sure, why not? Let's go.
I remember college.
They took me to some bar, dude, and I'm not, not gonna say the name of the bar, but like, I love Portland and all, but like, dude, some fucking tryhards. Like they're like, we're taking you to this rock and roll bar. I was like, sick.
What kind of tryhards though?
Like. People,
was this like a metal bar, rock bar, or
rock
like
bar,
rock
yeah,
bar?
like a rock bar. Just a lot of like people who like, I don't know, like a lot of people with like the Bon Jovi haircut, and like everybody just looks like they spent way too much time sourcing and putting together their clothes just to go out and make a drunken asshole of themselves.
Yeah,
because if you're gonna do it like me. Put on a fucking t-shirt and a hoodie, and you just go for it.
If you're not going to give a shit, just don't give a shit.
Yeah. But you know what I'm saying? It's like the irony of like, oh, I don't care about society, but I'm going to spend 3 hours in the mirror.
Right. Right. Fuck you, society.
Portland's fun. Everyone's either like a cowboy or like, it's like Halloween year round. It's like a Renaissance fair. It's like a modern Renaissance fair.
What a strange hell.
Yeah. There's wizards. There's witches selling their oils. There's a guy with a beard.
A guy with a beard.
Beards are out, dude. Now it's handlebar mustaches and mullets are in. Get with the time.
Those were never out in Portland. Bro. Please.
Ever since you moved out of Brooklyn, bro. You're not.
Hey, I'm still in Brooklyn, buddy. Okay.
Oh, that part of Brooklyn, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Bushwick. I heard someone call it bushwhack one time, and I had liquid in my mouth and I almost fucking spewed it.
Was it like in a disrespectful term, or were they talking about
yeah, for sure. Okay, so in the early 2000s, the neighborhood was Williamsburg. And even like you and me, our generation, Clint, of people that got called hipsters, that's hipster Mecca, was Williamsburg in the early 2000s. Those are the bars, those are the bands, that was the scene, that was the big scene. Williamsburg is not that way anymore. It's been completely washed out. people in their mid to late 30s with kids. It's not a hip young neighborhood. The crowd just grew up. They grew up.
And Orthodox religious people.
Yeah, they're Orthodox, very strict Orthodox religious people. But then that neighborhoods in New York shift and change as the demographics shift and change. But like one of the new hot neighborhoods, and it's kind of like an infection. Like if you don't treat an infection, it just spreads and grows, right? So as the infection of hipsterdom in Williamsburg in the early 2000s, as that spread, it literally geographically spreads on the map to neighborhoods that are just beyond the cusp of Williamsburg. And Bushwick is that neighborhood. And when I moved there, I didn't realize that. But we were right by the train station, and bro, it was a party 24/7 at this train station. Doesn't matter the weather, doesn't matter what was going on outside. If there's shooting, party still went on, dude. And it was just chaos. It was fun sometimes, but like not at 3 a.m. when you're trying to sleep.
Bro, yeah, like on like a Tuesday. And
bro, please, can we save this for Friday and Saturday, please?
This fucking bar.
I'm reasonable, all right?
It's see what it is. It's all like
but here's the thing. It wasn't a bar. It was literally a guy underneath the train station with a karaoke machine. What was his song? But it was all sorts of songs. He was actually really good. Sometimes he was playing some jams.
Did you ever tip him?
Yeah, for sure, dude. He was out there all the time. That was like a hip convergence, Knickerbocker Avenue. It was like a hip convergence. It was a big, active train station. But I was gonna say something else about Williamsburg. Oh yeah, in Williamsburg, early 2000s, there was like a couple proper venues, but it was a lot of like warehouses. Raves were big back then, but like Brooklyn at that point hadn't been gentrified, so it was like mostly warehouses and even some bars. Like they weren't in these really nice, newly renovated spaces like they are now. It was like dingy fucking. They were building up the money to do a renovation for a bar that had been a bar for 150 fucking years. It was just crazy to watch that change.
Dude, when's the last time you went to a rave? They still have to happen. They have to happen, right?
I'm actually, yeah. Well, I mean, I've worked a bunch. The last time I worked a rave was probably a couple of years ago, but actually this is hilarious. Shout out to, Mike Kluge. He got me tickets. He got tickets to this crazy thing, visual experience in a warehouse space, in Brooklyn. He couldn't go and he gave me the tickets and I went. It was fucking crazy. It was like basically, you know how if you go to a show, the band is the show and the lights are secondary?
Right.
So in Mike's world, with all the people that he knows and the art that he's tuned into, the visual component of each of the artists that performed was the show. The music was secondary.
The accessory to the main focus of art.
And that was like, it was definitely more organized than like the old school raves. Yeah. But I mean, dude, when I first moved to New York, I don't know if they still do shit, but there's this company called the Brooklyn Electronic Music Festival. Or maybe that was the festival. There was a company, they probably still do stuff. But those were like proper, completely independently produced, but proper warehouse raves, like 100,000 square foot spaces with just a massive DJ, crazy lights everywhere, people taking drugs all over the place, beach balls, foam, like just full insanity. It was well before Brooklyn had become this is well after Brooklyn had become that. Like it still is a thing, but it's not as lawless as it used to be by any means.
It's not a total insurance nightmare.
Yeah,
it's liability.
Like there's paperwork and like a lot of them now, I would say most of them now that go down there, go down in Brooklyn, are legit. You know, they have to obey the rules, and there's a person who's promoting it who had to get permits and It's legit,
I know this makes me sound old, speaking of birthdays and stuff, but that's one of those things that just makes me think, it's like, man, the world used to just be so much more fun. Like, I think everything just got regulated so much, and I'm sure there's cool shit going on. I just don't know about it.
I used to it used
like,
to be fun.
Where's the new frontier? Where's the Wild West?
But you got to also think, like, raves in the 90s, if you made it out of it without getting fucking totally tossed somehow, you had a good time. What about if you didn't? Like, think of how lawless shit is now. Imagine the 90s going to a rave, somebody slipping something in your drink.
Oh, yeah.
Where do you go if you're having a fucking
wake up with your kidney gone?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, well, yeah, sure. That further down in the night, yeah. But like, were you gonna go to the health tent if you're fucking having heart palpitations? No, because that shit didn't exist. And the reason that, like most safety shit, the reason that it exists is because some asshole died.
Yeah.
Some asshole died, and they're like, well, we don't want to be liable for that happening again in the future. So,
all right, guys, next time, water tent. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, dude.
Mario works at the Costco. He can get us a deal on a pallet of water.
It's also really strange to me, like, having worked like super large scale events. It's amazing to me that more people don't die.
Yeah.
I've definitely worked events where people have died because of like heat or probably some drug shit. But it's just amazing that it doesn't happen more often. And I mean, plenty of people get hurt, plenty of people get fucked up bad, but very few, I'm just surprised that very few people die.
What do they say in Jurassic Park? Life finds a way.
Life finds a way, yeah.
And that's why we're the official podcast of the Gathering of the Juggalos this year.
Yeah.
No one's gonna die. Not
it's
on my
the
watch.
official gathering.
Right?
It's the official gathering. No one's dying.
No one's gonna die on my watch. All right. That is funny. Not like funny to me, obviously, like fucking people getting fucked up at these huge like popular culture events like what, like the Travis Scott thing and like all these other things going on. But there's like, from what is supposed to be like a dangerous, edgy thing, like a death metal fest or something like that, like nothing bad happens there.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, I'm sure people get fucked up.
I mean, yeah, like people like get hurt in the pit or something, but it's definitely a situation where they're not getting trampled by the other people. It's like, oh, dude broke his arm. Let's help him up.
Dude, that's not true at all. I'm sure we could, if we did a quick Google search, we could find metal shows where shit went down and people got seriously hurt.
Yeah, but they're probably
I'm sure
they're probably like those like crazy Brazilian shows where like everybody comes out because it's like, they're not happening at like a Seattle.
Well, I mean, at a small scale event like that, yeah, for sure not. Yeah, well, I guess that's the thing. It's like your chance of dying at any music event is so low statistically. You have to get to the magnitude of hundreds of thousands of people before you start to get deaths as being a possible thing, right? Yeah. Like if you go to any club, you have a 1 in 500,000 chance of dying by virtue of being at that show at that place and time, right?
Right.
But if you go to a festival with 500,000 people, right, all of a sudden you're much more involved in that statistic.
And resources are limited and systems are barely working.
You're not in a town. You're not close to a hospital. Yeah, exactly. It's gonna take a car to get you to an ambulance to get you to a hospital.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, we talked about this last time, so I just don't go to big shit anymore.
It's no point.
I'm gonna die like a way cooler death than that.
I love camping, but that's not camping.
No, dude, that is not camping, dude. Camping,
that's not camping at all.
No, that's sleeping off.
You just went camping though, didn't you, Bub?
It wasn't camping, so it was glamping.
Oh, was it glamping?
Okay. Well, dude, it's fucking dead of winter. It's like, dude, there was 2 feet of snow.
Sorry. Oh,
Yeah, sorry.
you don't want to go snow
James.
camping? Well, then.
I packed my Gore-Tex underwear and I just fucking hit it. No, we found a cheap little Airbnb. It was nice. It was like just a little tiny house with like a hot tub. And the dude called me on the way up and he was like, "Hey, hot tub's broken." I was like, "Fuck you,
son of a bitch."
The whole thing was like, "Hey, we're just gonna go like be in a hot tub.
Chill in the hot tub."
Yeah. So I ended up like one day because the breaker kept flipping, like I think they had like a power surge or something. So one day I just made it a point to go make sure the breaker was on all day. So my last day there at 10:30 at night, it was 103 degrees and I finally got in. But I got $100 back, so that's cool.
Nice. It's the best of both worlds.
Nah, it was cool. It was cool though. But you know, it's a fucking like, no wonder the economy of Airbnbs is so fucked. Because after like staying in a hotel last week for work and just kind of mindlessly staying there, right? You just go in, you check out, take a shower, do whatever you got to do. Yeah. Airbnb is in the ass. Like, hey, by the way, can you water the plant? Can you feed the dog? Can you wash the sheets? I was like, motherfucker, I'm on vacation.
Can you raise my child?
By the way, the grass is getting a little high. Can you cut that on the way out? I was like, I just paid you $500 to stay in your tiny house. Like, suck a dick, dude.
Yeah.
You got 8 properties.
Yeah, you should leave that as a comment on the last place that you stayed.
No, he was not. I mean, dude, like that's the whole thing.
I don't.
Like,
you made me water your plants. Suck a dick, Brett.
How'd you know his name was Brett? Have you stayed at one of his places before? No, he was really nice.
He made me water the fucking plants.
He did offer. He was like, "Hey," he's like, "Do y'all want to stay an extra day and stay at our biggest property where the hot tub works?" And we were both like, kind of, but it's like kind of had to get back to work and shit. I got a lot of stuff to do. So just cut it short. But no, it was really nice being out connecting with nature. A beautiful Mount Rainier National Park and the Gifford Pinchot National Forest.
Oh, look at you fucking agriculturalist.
Love it. No, it was really just an excuse for me to go like microdose mushrooms and listen to black metal in a snowy setting, as it was fucking intended to be.
Yeah, as it was intended.
But no, dude, it was nice to get out for a couple of days, centered myself a little bit, and then just back into the fucking city bullshit. Everything seems so
immediately.
Right back in, dude.
It really. You can feel the anxiety increase the closer you get to the city. It's so crazy. It's so crazy.
Well, and then the worst part too is like, so, you're driving back through like the, kind of sparse, country roads and stuff. And then all of a sudden the first actual town you hit is like the most depressing shit in the world because there's like poverty. They keep building new strip centers, even though the strip center that's like down the street is like completely run down and broken and abandoned. So they just keep building new strip centers out towards
this one's gonna work. This one's gonna work.
Yeah, out towards the nature. And and as you're going into town, you're like, oh, this is a brand new like strip center with like a Fred Meyer and a Starbucks and all this stuff. And as you keep going, it's just the ruins of the last generation's businesses, dude. It's like so shitty. And then, do you feel the anxiety and the traffic just start to build as you drive back into the city?
It's the worst, dude. I hate it.
You going upstate? You go upstate to
No.
We don't have upstate.
This has always really pissed me off. Most people, when they're talking about upstate, they're thinking about a place called Westchester, which is 1 hour outside of New York. New York is a huge fucking state. It goes all the way up to Canada, borders multiple other states. To get to Albany, I think it's like 4 or 6 hours to get to Albany. That's upstate. So, no, I don't go upstate because, first of all, it's way too close to Canada. And second of all, that's just a lot of time. Usually when we get out into nature, it's when we'll go like stay at my parents. My parents live in that town in Pennsylvania, and it's basically the mountains. It's as close to the fucking sticks as you could get without camping. Super nice. Like the deer just come up into the yard.
Dude, same. Like that's where I was at. Dude. Yeah. It was fucking great.
Super peaceful. And then you get in the car and it just like spins up every minute you get closer. I'm the only other, like when we travel somewhere, we're probably going to go spend some time in nature. The last time we were out in California, we obviously went to the beach, but then we went on it was pretty nice. We went on a decent hike with my buddy Ian. We went on this like waterfall trail in Pasadena, and I've done it before, and it is on a sunny day, it would be brutal, but it was kind of cloudy. It was perfect. Like we didn't sweat at all because it was just, 60 degrees.
California, fuck you. Fuck you, California. You just
yeah. No, dude, this is great. Last couple weeks when the weather was getting all fucked,
everybody's just
loving.
Out, dude.
I was loving talking to my friends in California, being like, "Oh, what's the temperature there? Oh, what a shame."
Dude, no, I fucked up a lot of shit. There was like, I know there was like, obviously every tour that was going through there just got fucked because they don't have the infrastructure for it. But
nope.
That's, like, I'm glad I kind of grew up in a shitty place like Alabama, because like having the exposure to all those shitty things, just like super hot and super cold and, like bugs and all kinds of shit. It just makes you a harder person as to where like,
I don't know if they would classify Alabama winters as being, remarkably harsh.
Right. But colder than
California, Southern California. Yeah. Southern.
There is a winter. It gets down in the 30s, 20s and 30s.
Yeah.
It's humid and hot as fuck in the summer. We have bugs. There's shit that wants to kill you. There's snakes. There's not actually California has some snakes, but still. But still, it's not, you know what I'm saying? Like the elements, they can harden you. Yeah. And then the second that it snows, everybody's freaking the fuck out.
Yep.
But I guess that's fucking everywhere.
No, it's not.
Everybody, yeah. Well,
it's not.
Everybody up here has a Subaru and they just don't know how to drive it.
Yeah, that's the first problem. The second problem is just ignorance. Like if you haven't driven in snow, you're not going to know how to drive in snow. Yeah. You only learn how to drive in snow by fucking driving in snow.
By slamming on the brakes one time and going, nope, that didn't work.
Yeah. I'm going to have to rethink my whole strategy.
Jesus Christ. But yeah, dude. Nature was good. I'm gonna do it again soon.
Well, that's great. I'm so glad that you had such a rejuvenating birthday extravaganza in the woods. I'm so glad that you had that moment. You were talking about Alabama and the elements, and it has me thinking
about the elements of Alabama.
Not the elements of Alabama, the elements of the Southeast. So when I lived in Tennessee, I always wondered why in Tennessee, a decidedly like just reg old Christian place, why there were so many towns named after ancient Greek, ancient Egyptian, ancient Roman cities. And I never understood why. And right around the time I started thinking about that, I realized that, oh shit, all the other states around Tennessee also have the same thing. They've all got an Athens or a Smyrna,
Athens, Georgia,
or an Antioch, North Carolina, Mississippi. It's all over this region.
There's probably a Smyrna in every state.
Well, there was a couple of videos I was watching, but there's a hard number. It's not I think it might actually be a Smyrna, but there's a Smyrna in like 20 something states. It's crazy. Yeah. It's crazy. But I would always wonder why. First of all, where did the names from the cities come from? And if it came from, some kind of design. But a lot of these area, a lot of the geographic names, a lot of the river names, a lot of the area names weren't necessarily names that were given to them as a city was built there. They were names that had been there for, amongst the native tribes that inhabited that area, well predating the Christopher Columbus's and Amerigo Vespucci's. But where'd they get them from? So that's like a thing that I've always just thought about. I've always thought about since I lived there. Every time driving up 24, Smyrna, Antioch, and then Nashville with the fucking life-size replica of the Parthenon. And I'd always think that. Why? What the fuck's going on here? So I stumbled upon a video the other day, and it's fucking crazy. It's a rather wild hypothesis, but the more I'm entertaining it metaphorically, the more, not necessarily the more credible I find it to be, but the more interesting it becomes, and it kind of starts to dovetail something that we were talking about a couple episodes ago. Remember when we tried to look at that fucking Eye of Africa? That thing that people think, right? Okay, so there's been a lot of discussion recently. Let me rewind this because I think this is important if for foreshadowing, if nothing else. Early 1900s, when a lot of the mass medias were spinning up, newspaper, printed word was like super widely available. Radio was starting to be a thing. They were discovering all the stuff in Egypt and all these ancient the history of ancient civilizations, that died out long before 1920. And there was this huge surgence in like people who were involved in Masons or Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn or any of the other mystic organizations that kind of were like experiencing their serious heyday in the 20s. Huge emphasis on mysticism and tarot, right. And it was just much more a part of the common vernacular, and it was just the common thing that people were talking about. Then the war.
They said enough of this nonsense.
Yeah, the war stopped that. Now I'm not saying the war, the Great War, the war to end all wars, World War I, was I'm not saying it was like a distraction. I'm not saying it was with the intent of getting people to stop talking about mystical shit. But it's just interesting. There were larger forces at play. The war happens and it stops that conversation. And then really World War I goes into World War II. World War II goes into Korean War. I'm sure I'm missing some other wars. It's just a perpetual state of war. Like there was no coming back to that, and every war became more serious, and we had to stop thinking about other shit and just do what Americans are supposed to do: consume and squeeze out babies to go to fucking fight wars in all these countries that we're fighting wars in. So I think it's interesting now because right now there's a resurgence of the mystical conversation, and what gets tied into a lot of the mystic conversation or even the ancient cultures conversation is the knowledge, the wisdom. What was this advanced knowledge that they had? Did they have advanced knowledge? They did, and it's the foundation of life shit. It's like the basic and fundamental principles of math and shape and form that construct our reality, and it's encoded in the Bible. It's encoded in the mythology of ancient cultures. It's encoded in the buildings. There's a reason that regardless of where in the world you're looking at these ancient cultures that did these things, they all have the same knowledge of the same fundamental mathematic principles that govern the nature of our existence. I can't even remember where I was going with this, but ultimately that's like a common conversation again. People are starting to talk about that, and they're starting to talk about not only the, mysterious nature of these lost civilizations and like what the fuck that means. Like if we dig even further down, are we going to find like the remains of another crazy fucking, layer of the human experience that we had no idea, life on this planet? Right. That's a common conversation now, more so than it has been. And one of the big overarching conspiracy bubbles there is this thing called Tartaria. And Tartaria kind of goes back to, there's a specific place in time, but I think it was the Catholics, the Roman Catholics, and it was like when the Roman Catholics controlled their land, the people to the east of them were the Tartarians, and the people to the west of them were the barbarians of but barbarians. Like that's where we get the concept of barbarians. But it's this kind of idea that Tartaria was this, megalithic, possibly Greek in origin, possibly Jewish in origin, but like it was what was left over of Atlantis, or maybe even that's what Atlantis was, and it was an ancient civilization that predates our known history of these ancient civilizations, like more than 12,000 years ago, and it was all over the world, North America included. So there's one really great channel. I want to just give this a shout out. How is it all over
the world if it's in one place?
Well, no. See, here's the thing. In the same way that any empirical Great Britain, when the empire was its strongest, they weren't just in Great Britain. They were spread out all over the world. They had ports everywhere. They controlled countries. I mean, quite overtly. You see what I'm saying? Like that in a time before all of that, before Islam, before Christianity, before Judaism, in a time before all that, there was Tartaria or Atlantia, and it was this civilization that anyways, there's like a number of different rabbit holes you can go down here, but there's this one channel that's proposed a very interesting hypothesis. So this guy focuses on Florida, and I want to shout out his channel. It's called Old World Florida. It's got a bunch of shit on here, tons of great videos, does a bunch of podcasting, dives a little bit into the mystical shit, but really focuses on like the history and he proposes the idea that the natives of America, North America, didn't descend from Mongolia or however the current story states. They were actually Greeks, they were Phoenicians, and they were Moors, which were like Islamic, Mesopotamian, Middle Eastern, part of this larger civilization, Tartaria or Atlantis, that had settled North America. And I was like, damn, that's a rather crazy hypothesis. But then he goes and starts unpacking the names of these places in the Southeast that the Creek Indians, Creek is also Greek for creek. And they spoke Greek. They spoke fluent Greek. And in fact, if the comparison of their alphabet and language, it's the same thing. And the language that they spoke also has a bunch of similarities to Hebrew, and Hebrew is just Greek. It's, slightly modified. It all stems from, a common source. But basically what that's proposing is, well before the documented history of what we think the ancient world is now, the ancient timeline, there was this master society that had it was so large and so diverse. It would explain why all these different places all over the world with these megalithic sites, why they all have the same shit encoded in them. They all have the same purpose or meaning, that they were all at one point part of this global, it was like the culture of the planet. And then some cataclysmic event occurred and destroyed all that. And humanity was forced to rebuild through the Ice Age. And there's a couple strange ways you can go beyond.
We all know what happened from there.
Yeah. I don't know what happened from there.
And then instead of ending up with a mystical resurgence, we ended up with the rapper Mystical from what the Greeks call Louisiana. And
yeah. That's good.
That's good. Danger,
Yeah.
Shake your ass.
But watch yourself.
Show me what you're working with.
It's crazy, but the theory that he has about the Greek ancestry thing is crazy. There's a town in Florida that's the most Greek city in America, and it's very similar geographically to the ancient climate of ancient Greece. And he goes through like all these different city names around Florida and unpacks like these names existed when the natives inhabited the land, not when these other people inhabited the land. They didn't name it Antioch. They didn't name it Smyrna. The natives did. The natives had already, because it was their culture. They were Greeks or Phoenicians or Moors, which were, again, Mesopotamian, it's crazy. He goes through all the old architecture in Florida. And I even remember living in Florida and thinking that was so weird that for as much as, the English and Spanish and French and every country came in and just decimated the natives of that area, why it was such a big part. Everything was named the native name. You know what I mean? Like we erased every part of their history except for the fucking names. Well, and it felt so out of place to me.
At least we named the football teams after them. Come on now.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Exactly.
Well,
a real form of tribute. Yeah.
So are you saying like that this dude, we're like the old Florida history, whatever.
Yeah.
He believes that Native American descent is actually from this ancient civilization.
Well, it's not just him. He is putting together the information. He cites people who do like legitimate tracing and historical research to validate the claim. He's just presenting it, right? But dude, there's one guy on there who has mapped a fair amount of certain native tribes' blood from North America. It's Greek blood.
That's just 23andMe, baby.
Dude, it's Greek blood. It's Greek blood, Greek and Hebrew blood. How did it get there? How were the natives of this country, how did they have Greek and Mesopotamian blood? It's because they were Greek and Mesopotamian. Like, we constantly shit on these ancient cultures like they could have never found Florida. It's like, dude, like they were building megalithic structures. There are for sure right now cities that are still encased in sand that we'll never find. Like they couldn't sail to Florida. They were sailing everywhere. They had sailed all over the globe. I don't know. It's just interesting. The DNA though is like, it's hard to dispute that. It's hard to say that that's not a thing. When it is a thing, it's not that crazy to believe. Now the thing is why is that crazy? So this kind of gets tied into the Tartaria thing a little bit. He doesn't focus on Tartaria.
Right.
He talks about all sorts of shit that are around this subject.
Right.
But it all really pertains to Florida, like how it.
But that cutoff point too is just like, so what happened pre our history,
right?
Because there was definitely human life before then, right?
That we even have. This is scientifically acknowledged, we have found human remains that are like our kind of human that are hundreds of thousands of years old. It's more than possible, dude. It's very likely that a lot of it is just in a place that we can't see because we haven't dug 100 or 600 feet down in the right spot to find the layer that is relevant to history. Who knows? Maybe it's like, miles and miles further down how many times Earth has re-terrained itself. But the Tartary thing becomes interesting because I always think back to basically this, again, isn't old world Florida. This is more Tartaria. But Tartaria is that this ancient civilization had all these, megalithic cities all over the place. And when, the modern society inherited it, we either built our towns on top of the old society or we demolished their society and rebuilt ours.
Yeah, and just hung a new sign on the front. Yeah.
And they try and, they use old pictures to try and validate that claim. I'm not saying I believe that. But one of the interesting things that I always kind of stop and think about is, remember the pictures of the Chicago World's Fair?
Yeah.
Remember how like that, like the ornate nature of the fairground? It looked like a whole fucking city.
Yeah.
And then it burns down in the Chicago fire. And if you go back and look at Nashville's World's Fair. If you go back and you look at all the old World's Fairs, there's literally an entire city. And then in all of these cases, it disappears. And what they try and say is if you look at the architecture of these fairgrounds of the cities before, great fires came and destroyed everything.
Right.
They're like Moorish. They're Mesopotamian. They're not, not even Greco-Roman style or I guess, I don't know, Victorian maybe would be at that era, 1800s, 1700s, late 1700s, early 1800s.
I'm not good at architecture. I don't know.
Neither am I. But it's just interesting because I remember looking at a lot of those pictures and just being like, damn, how that's like a whole city. This was like a portion of Chicago and they tore it all down. They didn't want it. It burned down. None of it's left.
Oh, what?
You didn't
want to live in the carnival, James?
I'm not saying people had to live there, but how cool would it be to go see it? It looked really cool. Okay, so here's where it gets crazy. So I've watched a bunch of these videos. He goes into a lot better detail, but basically he says, he proposes the idea that the natives of this country were actually ancient Greeks, Hebrew, Phoenicians, or Moors, and they had been here for a very long time, and as that society kind of starts to crumble, they're kind of left to their own devices and they all kind of evolve in their own separate ways, their own traditions. But even like the descriptions of the natives of North America, they wear the same dress as like Mesopotamian or Greek people of that time. It's fucking crazy. And like, this is a lot of the history that we never get told. We don't get told any of this. We don't see any of these pictures unless we go searching it out, we get sold the idea that the natives of this country had, feather headdresses and were riding around on horses, and some of them were, but there were a lot of other ones that were doing all sorts of other shit, including building megalithic mound structures, megalithic structures in North America, all over Mexico, South America. That's what they were doing. It was the remnants of Atlantis. So here's where it gets ridiculous.
This is where it gets ridiculous.
This is where it gets ridiculous. There's a couple of videos on there that lay out a very interesting argument to suggest that we're going way, 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 way back in time.
Old school, huh?
Old school. So I guess I don't know exactly what this means in terms of his timeline that he proposes, but I'm just going to try and piece it together based on the videos that I've watched. There was a master civilization on this planet. It was the global dominant civilization. Every continent was represented from this civilization. It was a civilization that had some affinity for building megalithic structures, pyramids, and an advanced understanding of mathematics and the nature of existence on the planet and in the universe, but also a fundamental connection to nature, and it was harmonious. But then at some point, there's a cataclysmic Earth event, a flood, caused by an earthquake, comet, who knows, whatever, it doesn't fucking matter. The enlightened, the ones that are near Noah or whoever Noah was at some point in the past, like the character that Noah is supposed to represent, they get on this boat, they survive, they crash in the mountain, they have to rebuild society, and that's from that point is where we get like the common story of where mankind came from. We descended from the Caucasus Mountains and, you know, became what we are now. Caucasians, right? Or, you know, but that's like, you see what I'm saying? Like that's the missing portion. The missing portion is there was this society, this much more important society before that got wiped out from a cataclysmic event, and some events in the Torah, in the Bible, in the Quran were actually historical. They were historical events that did happen. And over the course of time, we've heard those stories, but, you know, the game of telephone and filtered by whoever was in charge, King James Bible, who even knows about the Quran, who knows about the Torah, you know what I mean? But in this theory, the Garden of Eden was a real place. It's not a metaphorical story. It was an actual place. It was. I don't know if he implies that it was Atlantis, but it was a part of this. It was in the utopian society, right? And then because of some cataclysmic event, people are forced to leave paradise and go. So here's where it gets very strange. He does the normal unpacking of all the different names that kind of line up with references of the telling of the Garden of Eden. And there's like all these name significances in Florida and like geographic consistencies with the story of the Garden of Eden. And there's a lot of weird stuff about like the Florida soil is some of the most fertile soil in the world. Its position close to the equator makes it ideal for growing all sorts of things. There's like the abundant quality of plant life there's only a few places in the planet that are that. You know, Amazon is another one of them, but that it was real. Like all the shit in the beginning of the Bible is actually taking place in North America in Atlantis. Okay, like or this you know, predating us major megalithic society. You know, there's like the nod to Bermuda Triangle, and there's and dude, even the story of the discovery of America, they talk about Christopher Columbus. Bro discovered the Bahamas and he thought it was India. Amerigo Vespucci discovered America. That's why it's called America and not Christopherica.
Yeah.
But anyways, I digress.
I'm so glad we don't live in Christopherica.
Yeah, that sounds like a real shit place. But anyways, the Garden of Eden is Florida. And he there's two pieces of note, two things to note. He has an interview with this old school TV reporter has with this super old guy who's like a pastor, and he's convinced that Florida is the Garden of Eden. And he quotes this specific thing in the Bible. He's like, in the Bible, God told Noah to build the ark with this specific type of wood. That specific type of wood only grows here. And like he lays out like this rather elaborate justification. A lot of the descriptions of the Garden of Eden in the Bible match certain geographic formations in Florida. Some really strange fucking shit. Where it gets even weirder is that I don't know if you saw this a couple years ago, but they said they found Noah's Ark. Yeah. Right. That's way more legit than I think people gave her credit for. Like they found this anomaly on a mountain, and locals in that area have been saying that that's where Noah's Ark ended up. They've been saying it, back into the olden times. Like it's an old local story. But there's this, what appears to be a massive ship that's now on the side of a mountain. And I watched a couple of videos where these guys like spelunk down. It's a boat. Like there's wood. It looks like it's either a massive structure that was built on the mountain that got caught in a mudslide, or it's a straight up fucking boat on the side of this mountain. So this isn't anything new. Like I've always been of the mind, like I'm sure any of the ancient sacred texts, I mean, even the Torah, that's just the first book of the Bible in the Christian Bible, right? Yeah. And the Quran is very similar. All of them have the same origin, which was the predating society. In that case, it was the Egyptians. The Egyptians were the remnants of the Sumerians. The Sumerians were the remnants of this Atlantean society. It all came from the same shit, and it just got changed every time it got into somebody's hands. But what always tripped me out is that all the religions recognize that most of the characters are the same. Like Jews recognize that Christ was real. So does Islam. Islam recognizes Christ. They just don't recognize Jesus Christ as God like the modern day Christians do. But there's all reference to similar characters because it was all happening in the same area. It was all happening, and it's just like, different people told it differently depending on what they... Anyways, all I mean to say is like maybe some of the ancient history story, maybe the Bible was the best rendition of the history of shit that they could come up with, that incorporated everything. The origin story of humanity as they knew it, as best as they could record it at the time, because we're talking about peasants in ancient world. No one read. Very few people wrote. It's not a thing that... This was the best they could do. They couldn't give detailed descriptions. They're like, there was a flood. Noah built an ark and a bunch of animals got on it and they saved humanity and had to rebuild it from this area. And then all these other things happened at approximately these times. And then, but also allegorically encode, the movement of... That's where it trips me up. Are these actual events that actually happened, or is it all metaphorical, or is it a combination of both? Is it a combination of actual historical record of events that did occur, but sideways encoded in that is the divine mathematics, how things take shape and form, the understanding of the vibrational nature of the universe that all these ancient cultures had. I don't know. I've literally been yelling at you for 40 minutes now. So what do you think about any of this? Go ahead and chime in whenever you want, buddy.
I mean, I would if you would, shut up.
Exactly. Yeah.
Second.
Exactly. Yeah.
No. I mean, that seems like it all makes sense, right? Because just like you were saying, any of these ancient religious texts, like I think that first step into like understanding that all religion is just all modern religion is just kind of a hoax and a fraud, is that like once you kind of look into them, they all say the same shit basically. So there's got to be one universal truth, right? That is not just trying to, I guess devalue the other, right? It's like the actual something happened. and then it all just got spun off in different ways forever,
and everyone got all pissy about how they were spelling this person's name,
not my God. Yeah. My God. But yeah, no, that all seems to make sense. I mean, it just got me thinking that
honestly, I thought you would be more resistant to the idea that Florida was the actual location for the Garden of Eden. I figured you might be a little more resistant to that than you are.
I don't know how fucking like Pangea and shit works. Cause like when you were saying, it's like, okay, if the Eye of Africa is over there, it makes sense that it could have been connected to like Florida.
Oh shit. Yeah. I'm not even thinking about that, but yeah.
Or just like a lot closer or, whatever it may be. Right.
Yeah.
So that could make a lot of sense. And it just got me thinking that before I even say that, Florida is not the Garden of Eden. And if it is,
that's what I thought. Okay.
Weird shit that really fucking rich people already took up. Like, what if all these secrets are buried under fucking Disney World, and that's why they have that shit on lockdown? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and then there's all those weird. And here's your favorite part. If Walt Disney owns it, he had something to do with the Nazis. So
for sure.
Sorry, you thought we were gonna go one episode and not mention Nazis?
No, definitely not. Well, and there was one of the videos. This is kind of just like a deterrence from most of what his videos are saying, but I watched one video today where they interview this really old Finnish guy, or the guy from Finland, and he starts talking about how in the Finnish culture, the proto origin story is basically the shit in the Garden of Eden happens, all the stuff with Cain and Abel, all that shit happens. Noah builds the ark. That ark goes and crashes on this mountain. They travel across the mountain to what would then be like Sweden, Norway, but at that point it was just ice. It was the Ice Age.
Right.
And that's where Atlantis was. And as the ice melted, then the Sumerians were the only remnants of that, and the Egyptians were the only remnants of that. But that one, this Finnish guy, like, then they kind of like cut the interview off, but he starts to get a little Nazi-y, because basically what he says is like, yes, at one point they were Phoenicians or like Mesopotamian, dark skin, Middle Eastern people, but then they get on this boat and they go to the Arctic to ride out the Ice Age, and over time their skin loses all pigmentation, their hair becomes blonde, their eyes become blue, because they're just surrounded by white at all times. And that's why people of that area are
they have certain characteristics, right?
And even like when the Nazis, all those guys were talking about finding the Proto-Aryan race, that's what they were talking about. They were looking to that origin story and trying to use it to justify them, not only the final solution and killing all the Jews, having this like master race, but they were using it to justify going on these like crazy treasure hunting expeditions where they were trying to find these relics that would justify the Viking Valhalla Aryan culture, proto culture that they said they all descended from. Did we ever talk about that?
No.
There's like a couple really good documentaries on it, but it was a whole thing that Hitler was, and I can't remember which of his lackeys was like the one who was really pushing it, but they were saying this myth that there was this proto race, the Aryans, blonde hair, blue eyed, descending from the north, Icelandic, Viking, Norse, Valhalla, Viking gods, and that's what they were basing their shit off of. In fact, the Finnish, a symbol that they used a lot back in its ancient meaning, in the same way that other ancient cultures use the swastika, the Finnish use the swastika. That was like a huge part of their thing. This is thousands of years before the Nazis. This is back in using it in the ancient context. That's also a symbol that was a part of all of those ancient societies that are all in these different parts all over the globe.
Native Americans too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. All the other cultures on the globe, there's like certain symbols that they all use, and it's because at one point they were all a part of the same tribe. It was all a part of the same tribe, and cataclysmic event after extinction level event after cataclysmic event, enough of that shit gets wiped out to where the only thing that really remains is the DNA, and the DNA is now proving what we thought about history is not at all the case, because we're finding remains of people in certain places at certain times that, according to the current records, they shouldn't have been there for tens or hundreds of thousands of years.
Well, I don't know. One thing's for sure. You and I spend our personal time very differently.
Well, see, but this is the thing, is like, this isn't even like, I'm not spending my personal time obsessing over this shit.
Know. You just like to know.
Well, I consume knowledge, and I kind of build my life around being able to multifunction while also be consuming knowledge. Dude, like, I've Duolingo. I'm learning 6 languages right now.
Shut the fuck up, dude.
I need to feel like I'm learning. If I don't feel like I'm learning, if I don't feel like I'm growing, I get real depressed. I get in like these really dark spaces. So this to me is just, it's not tangible history, but it is interesting history. There's a lot of interesting, super obscure history about Florida that is super cool that I've learned that isn't necessarily directly related to that. But yeah, it's just something that I can't help but not think about, because it's something that when I lived in Tennessee, dude, I'm not kidding you. I'm sure we talked about it. Why Smyrna, Antioch? Why Athens? Why are all in the most conservative and Christian place in the country? Why is there a heavy Egyptian and Greek theme? Why? It's these people don't like that, but they don't seem to question why all of these names around them are not white Anglo-Saxon Protestant names.
Yeah.
And this is an interesting way to kind of explain that. And for me, it's not only the DNA, but it's also that the natives of this country could speak Greek. The Creek Indians could speak and read fluent ancient Greek. They found a stone. This stone falls onto the highway. Someone examines the stone. There's writings from 4 different languages, all of which that predate Christopher Columbus, and they're Mesopotamian languages, Aramaic, Hebrew. I think there's a couple other like dead Mesopotamian languages on a rock in fucking Oklahoma or Pennsylvania or somewhere that predates Christopher Columbus. It's crazy.
Where did this rock fall from?
Here, I'll look it up.
If you say Ocala, Florida, I'm going to hang up.
No, it's not. It's not.
A magical place called Orlando.
Well, dude, he breaks down a lot of St. Augustine. That's the oldest city in America. Do you know that? Yeah. And it's not Spanish. It's a star fort. And you know who built a lot of the star forts? The Moors of Mesopotamia, ancient Mesopotamia. St. Augustine is the oldest city in America. And if you look up and down that coast, there's a bunch of cities there that have been there for hundreds of fucking years, according to the current record. And they were cities and civilizations of people there when the fucking Europeans came over. It becomes more and more reasonable the more you kind of go back and read the history that we weren't taught, even about some of the natives of this country, like some of the more prominent names and what they were capable of doing, what the explorers who first met with them wrote about their civilizations. It's not what we learned in school at all. Like you read the people talking about the captains that met the first natives in the Northeast, and they were talking about fields, miles of corn that was 15 feet high, crazy buildings, again, like laid out to some kind of like Aztec situation, you know, mounds and complete moving in complete peace with nature. Hang on one second. Let me see if I can find this. The damn thing.
I don't know. I like.
Yeah, here it is. Well, here's one. But this isn't it. Hang on a second. I have to find this. Now it's going to piss me off if I don't.
I just like that idea that it further strengthens that Walt Disney is some kind of crazy, not what it seems like.
He definitely is.
Because of like what's under that land in Orlando. You know what I mean?
Who knows? I mean, that was a massive undertaking when he did it.
Yeah.
And yeah, who the fuck knows? But this is it. Let me get to the juice here. God damn it. Where's just like the quick summary? And there's been like multiple stones like this found all over America with like Norse writing on it and you know, all sorts of ancient languages. God damn, are you kidding me? Jesus Christ. Here we go. Yeah, this fell onto an Highway 66 and someone realized that it had this shit on it. And the sign next to it says, at least 8 Old World alphabets are engraved on it. These alphabets were extinct when Columbus arrived in the New World in 1492. The alphabets are 1st century Greek and Hebrew, Old Libyan, Old Arabic, Iberian Punic, which probably dates from the 9th century, BC Ogam, Germanic runes, and Tifnang Numidian are also on this stone. Like, dude, we don't know shit. We didn't hear about any of this shit. Like this isn't even obscure knowledge. This is all known shit. It's just the answer is standing right in front of us, and for some vested interest in us not knowing about our history, people are just willing to look. Like, yeah, I can't avoid that.
It serves other humans' agendas for people
Sure.
in certain areas to act certain ways and believe certain things. So yeah, that's what it all boils down to, right? There has to be one universal truth to something, and not based off of a religious text or a story, but like an actual truth.
Tangible, undeniable, genetic, carbon datable proof.
Yeah.
And I think at some point in our lifetime, that will be a discussion that we will witness, because it's becoming undeniable, and the proliferation of this technology is going to make it more impossible. The same thing with UFOs.
I think we're more likely to have a cataclysmic event than have people agree to.
So I'll go back to saying what I was saying before about 1920s, when the interest of that became super high. World War. That's all it took. A global catastrophic event, that'll get people stop talking about this for sure. They're priming us up with the aliens for sure. Right. They're priming us up with some alien shit.
Mystical, if you're listening, we need you now more than ever.
We need you now more than ever before.
And if you don't like it, you can go back to Christoferica.
Who's going to tell me to watch myself? All right, that's all. This is
danger.
This is flying off the goddamn rails. We can't trust any of this. We're done here. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Visit Florida.
Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. We did it.
This has been the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. With your hosts, Clint G and James Oliva. Executive producers, Clint G and James Oliva.
That's obnoxious.
Sound design, mix, and master by James Oliva.
Literally no one cares.
For more totally legitimate business, subscribe to our YouTube channel at Totally Legitimate Business or add us on TikTok at TLB Pod.
When will this end?
Thank you for listening. Now get back to work.
Move it along, buddy.